Tom, you've represented, lived in, and helped lead rural communities for most of your life. Over that time, you've watched them evolve, watched them respond and not respond to new challenges and opportunities. From where you sit today, share some thoughts on how you see some of the most promising opportunities and some of the most pressing challenges facing rural communities.
Tony, that's a great question, and I appreciate being asked. You know, as I listen to you ask the question, as I reflect on it, when I was mayor of Mount Pleasant, a town of 8,000 in southeast Iowa, the sole goal of a rural community like Mount Pleasant, a county seat town, was to secure additional economic opportunity through small manufacturing as a way of complementing the agricultural economy, as a way of providing additional job opportunities, second income opportunities for farm families. Over the course of my lifetime, we've seen a tremendous consolidation of land ownership. Farms have gotten larger, ranches have gotten larger, which means we have fewer and fewer farmers. And many of the communities that relied on having a lot of farmers to support their Main Street businesses now find themselves struggling. The strategy of attracting small manufacturing facilities was a good one in the 60s when the US economy was the only real functioning economy in the world following World War II. And it was pretty successful for 10, 20, 30 years. But over the course of the last 10 or 20, 30-year period, we've seen an erosion of that capacity for a multitude of reasons. And we haven't seen the adjustment, the transition, if you will, that needs to be made to the next economy, whatever that is. Now, I happen to think that we are in a place where that next economy is right around the corner, and it offers tremendous opportunity for rural communities, for agriculture, and to bring manufacturing back to smaller communities. And by that, I mean a commitment on the part of US agriculture to really take climate change seriously, to embrace the conservation practices that we know will sequester and store carbon, to look for ways in which agricultural waste can be converted into a variety of new products. And in doing so, create more farm income and more job opportunities. You complement that with the growing local and regional food system movement, and now you have just an expanded number of opportunities for entrepreneurship and farm income. And I think that is the direction, that is the transition that needs to take place in order to bring prosperity back to rural communities. And I think we're poised to do this. I think American agriculture and the commodity groups, leaders of American agriculture, understand the necessity of branching out beyond just the traditional commodity market approach to agriculture. I think we're seeing more interest among young people of that entrepreneurial opportunity, local and regional food systems. And I think we're seeing consumers here in the United States and around the world demanding more sustainable production of agricultural products that they're consuming and that they're using their purchasing dollars to buy. So I think the stars are aligned, if you will, and it's a tremendous opportunity. The question is whether we will take full advantage of it, and in doing so, whether we will lead not just nationally, but whether we'll lead globally in this area.
So let's build on that then and take that lens a little smaller on how we might take advantage of that. You're familiar with land-grant universities in general, and now after the last 4 years, you're much more familiar with the Colorado State University system. Our colleagues at a Hispanic serving institution and a fully online place. Share some thoughts maybe about how we can take that array of assets across those institutions and deploy them exactly for that purpose, to benefit rural Colorado and take advantage of those opportunities.
Well, there is just so much opportunity and I think responsibility on the part of the land-grant university system to be part of moving to this new transition, to helping this transition and moving this rural economy from a history of extraction to a more circular, more regenerative economy. First and foremost, there's obviously the ability of extension, which is critically important to the mission of land-grant universities, to get the information out, to work with the climate hubs that are located from USDA that are located on land-grant college campuses, to get the information to farmers, ranchers, and producers about the challenges that climate change presents in terms of traditional agriculture and the need and understanding of the opportunities that do exist to expand income by doing the right thing by the land, by embracing soil health, by focusing on water quality and water quantity measures that that assure that you can continue to grow and raise what you've been growing and raising, but to make and get more out of it, if you will. So I think extension has a role. I think obviously a huge opportunity on the research and development side. You know, it's the land grant universities that are producing a lot of the new science that's going to help us measure and quantify and verify and certify the conservation results to establish the precision agricultural techniques, the use of sensors, drones, and other technologies, so that we are very, very precise with what we do in a way that impacts and affects not only farm income, but also is environmentally beneficial. And then, you know, I think there's obviously an opportunity for land grant universities to recognize its role in making sure that the workforce of the future in agriculture, in food and agriculture, represents the country that we are becoming. This is no longer and will no longer over in a relatively short period of time have a majority population. So it's going to be necessary in the food and agriculture industry to have a workforce that's reflective of that consuming population in the U.S. And I think the work at Colorado State, in particular with Together We Grow, working with agribusinesses, working with land grant universities, working with historic Black colleges and other minority serving institutions, is a critical component to identifying how diversity and inclusion may be embraced by the food and agriculture industry, and where the young people are that will lead that effort or provide that workforce of the future. And being able to have that centered at a land grant university, I think, is very, very important, because a lot of these young people are going to come from rural areas. And when they first think of a college or a university, many of them think of a land grant opportunity or one of those minority serving institutions. So a partnership, a closer collaboration between those institutions, I think, will be incredibly beneficial. I think the leadership, and that would include you and the presidents of the university, the various components of Colorado State University, have a interesting role to play from a standpoint that you are community leaders. And agriculture and the food and agriculture industry has been subject to criticism, oftentimes unfairly, about the perception that it is not committed to sustainable practices, when in fact most producers are indeed committed to this. So I think there's an opportunity here as well for the leadership of Colorado State University to add voice to the commitment that American agriculture and the food industry have made and are making and will make in sustainable practices in that regenerative circular economy. So I think there's just a multitude, and many land grant universities have business parks that they also can use to incubate some of the new innovative companies, whether it's in the local and food agricultural space, natural food space. Clearly, Colorado State University with the National Western Center is poised to really be at the center of that conversation with the food and ag innovation portion of that project. The opportunity for focus on the critical water needs that Colorado, specifically in the West generally, will face in the future, and how you identify strategies for conservation and reuse of water, critically important. Helping to inform the policy decision makers about what the best policies could potentially be, being able to sort of test market ideas and thoughts in a collaborative process at the National Western Center. And then, of course, understanding that when we talk about climate, we talk about the challenges of climate, we're also talking about disease and health issues, both animal and people, human health needs that are linked. And the One Health component of the National Western Center, again, reinforces the role that land grants have, and specifically Colorado State has in this future. I think it's incredibly bright. The challenge will be obviously to prioritize and to be able to fund these efforts, and also to make sure that the land grant universities are very efficient with the resources that they have, in the sense that you are part of a larger system. And the question is, does the right hand know what the left hand is doing? And how do you continue to have coalitions and entities that work together so that you're doing something at Colorado State University that's not being replicated, someplace else, but that is building a foundation for other research someplace else, or that you're learning and you're utilizing the research in someplace else to further an effort. I think the work that you all are doing on the issue of biodefense, that Alan Rudolph and his folks have put together this coalition of land-grant universities to take a look at how do we identify problems at the farm as quickly as possible that could potentially be the spread of something really, really serious. How do we contain it? How do we have enough capacity to produce the vaccines and so forth that will be able to treat it and respond to it quickly? That's all part of this transforming agricultural economy that I'm talking about.
If you and I had had this conversation a year ago, I would have said that given the connectors that occur at the National Western Center and our Spur campus, connectors between the disciplines, as you pointed out, and connectors between urban and rural issues, with all the biodefense things that you mentioned as well, I would have felt pretty good about where we were positioned around things. And then over the span of this year, along came this global pandemic that none of us exactly anticipated, and it's dealt a new card into the mix around rural issues. Here in Colorado, we've seen a lot of migration toward rural communities and a lot of interest in that migration as well, putting pressure on infrastructure within rural communities and things of that nature as well. I'm curious if you have thoughts on your perspective of, is that going to be an ongoing pressure? We've come through a wave of urbanization over the last several decades. Rural populations have been tending to decline. Is this a temporary reversal of that, or do you think that's a longer term trend that we're going to face?
I don't know that I have an answer to that, and I'm not sure I'd be confident in anyone who says that they do. Just because until we have herd immunity with COVID, until we have vaccinated enough people in this country to basically feel safe to come out and to have whatever the new normal is going to be begin to take hold, to take root, and so we better understand what the trends are, I think it's still up in the air. But if this were to happen, then the country is going to have to get very serious about infrastructure. The reality is, it's one thing to talk about moving to a rural community and doing a business remotely. It's another thing if you don't have high-speed internet access in that community that is so important to being able to do what you need to do from a remote location. It's great to talk about moving to a rural community, but if the school system is located somewhere else, or the school system is not supported with enough teachers to do advanced placement, or with the technology that allows distance learning, are you really going to move there? If you're moving to a community that where the water is challenged, either in terms of quantity or in terms of the quality of the water, are you really going to move there? So I really think before we know for sure whether this is a trend or whether this is just a sort of a reaction to COVID, I think we need a little more time. And I think in the meantime, while we're trying to figure this out, it makes sense, even if that doesn't happen, to make the investments in the broadband and to make the investments in water systems, because those infrastructure investments are equally important to that transitioning economy we talked about. And so you want to be in a position either way to welcome people or to create an economy that compels people to come. I have the belief that if you create this transitioning economy, this circular regenerative economy, that really is cutting edge, I think you're going to have a lot of the young people that are really excited about living in a community that's smaller, where they know their neighbors and where they have a high quality of life. But that's going to require these infrastructure investments, and it's going to require understanding. Many communities today, Tony, I think in rural areas are simply, they're focused on hanging on. The mentality, the attitude is, boy, if we can just keep our school, we just keep our hospital, we're in good shape. Those are tax supported institutions. You need tax paying institutions. You need the kinds of business opportunities and economic opportunities that it says to a bright young person graduating from Colorado State University, I don't have to stay in Denver necessarily to find opportunity that is really earth shattering and cutting edge and gives my life significant meaning, I can go back to my community, or I can go back to a community similar to where I was born and raised, and make a real difference in the world. And I think to do that, you're going to have the economy, and you're going to have the infrastructure that supports the economy. And if you have that, I think people will come.
An important vision, I think. We'd be remiss if we didn't end by wishing you success in your role in the new administration, and to express our thanks for what you brought to our efforts to bring the Spur campus at the National Western Center to life. I think you know this, but I'll say it anyway. You're always welcome anytime you visit Colorado town. Thank you.
Well, Tony, really the thanks needs to go the other way. Certainly appreciate the opportunity to have worked with you personally. And I've said to you, and I've said it to others, I think Colorado State is incredibly well led by you and the presidents that you've appointed and have working with you on the various campuses and the global campus and the online campus. So you've got a great team, and you got a great mission, and you all approach it enthusiastically and passionately. I've learned a lot from you, and I've learned a lot from CSU, and I fully expect that if I'm confirmed in this new opportunity, that I'll be a little bit better prepared for it than I was the last time, both in terms of understanding the land-grant university significance, as well as understanding how it can partner with minority serving institutions to create opportunities for everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.